it literally, when I go out here, and again, going back to being here my whole entire life, it makes me want to cry when I see that. When I see things like that, when I've gone to Giant Rock and I've camped to Giant Rock when there wasn't a speck of graffiti, to see it now, it's completely destroyed. It makes me want to cry when I see that.
Welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, conversations with women who have found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 155. Find out more about the podcast at desertladydiaries.com and engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries. Jillian Sauter has always loved the desert and has lived in the Morongo Basin since 1992. As a kid, Jillian would camp, hike, and off-road with family, and as she got older, her love for adventure and exploring continued, but more and more she began to notice areas were becoming contaminated by illegal dumping. After reaching out to several agencies, she and her husband Colin came to the unfortunate conclusion that nothing was going to be done about the sites they were finding, so they started Desert Cleanse Project. To date, their organization has hosted many group cleanups and collected over 150,000 pounds of trash and 750 tires. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. And before we even get started, I just want to acknowledge that's a lot of trash and a lot of tires and a lot of time. So thank you to you and Colin and all the volunteers who have come out to help you do these cleanups. Thank you so much.
Of course. And sadly, there's so much more.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
What was your first experience with desert?
When I was a kid, my family and I've been out here since 1992. And so my family and we've always hiked and camped and gone off-roading. And luckily, when I was a kid, we didn't have as much development as we do now. So there were so many areas to go exploring, and we would just pack up the truck with a bunch of stuff and go out for the weekend. And we would see bighorn sheep, we would see different birds, we would see foxes and all kinds of animals. And that was what really just made me fall in love with this area around us.
So you grew up here?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Yep.
And went to school here. What was that experience like for you?
It was interesting because you always hear stories that there's nothing to do for kids. And traditionally what you think there is to do, we don't really think of. We don't really go to nature. We tend to always think of putting kids in indoor activities and having them go to boys and girls clubs, which are great, but we don't realize the things that we have around us that we can utilize. It just is really great for me to be able to have the outdoors, to be able to exercise and run around. And so in school, I was always the oddball out because for me, I would always go to nature. I never really related with those people that played video games or would play basketball, play soccer, or stay indoors. I always had to be outside. It was strange. It was kind of awkward, but it was a really good experience, I think, at least.
Was it hard to find friends then that were kind of cut from the same cloth, if you will, that were nature lovers?
Especially because I was an only child, so that kind of enabled myself to stick to myself, because I feel like kids that have siblings, they kind of have a different social aspect than single children. So I wasn't very social with my peers. I stuck to myself a lot more, which probably made it why I stuck to nature a lot, because it gave me the ability to just really be by myself. Mm-hmm. So I would say, especially if you're not into partying and doing all that stuff after football games and after dances, yeah, it definitely makes it hard to make friends. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen then in your lifetime in this basin?
In 1992, I was 2 years old, so I was really young. But even as a young kid, so my street was barely paved. The cross street actually wasn't even paved. We had maybe 3 or 4 signal lights. Everything else was stop signs. We had no Starbucks, which I'm sure is really hard for people to fathom. We still only have one, which is still really hard for people to fathom.
Well, technically two, because now we have one in 29 Palms.
Yeah, if you can make that drive, if you're in
Right.
Joshua Tree, you're like, do I sit in the lines in Yucca, or do I just make the drive to 29 with no lines? So yeah, it's the trade-off. There was barely any signal lights. You could literally time the time from beginning of Yucca to into Joshua Tree and hit every single light green. That's how little signal lights there were. And there weren't turning lane, like the arrows. We had the yielding green because that was it. There were definitely more paved roads than there were dirt roads. There was definitely more travel by off-road vehicles and horses than there were regular cars. My husband and his aunt would ride a horse from Joshua Tree by the park entrance to McDonald's and take their horse through the drive-through McDonald's.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, so definitely a lot less people. Now we have a Starbucks, we have an Arby's, we have a Panda Express. We have a lot less mom and pop businesses. The park is flooding with tourism, which is, great, but it's also hard on our park employees and our mom and pop shops, what's left, to try and accommodate that. Our housing situation is kind of up in a fiasco. We're going more towards short-term rentals than we are actually having housing for people. It's kind of getting all bought up by investors. It's getting built up. And it's hard because the more we populate as humans, the more our environments are going to get taken up. It's not just Joshua Tree. Yosemite's have, had a similar problem. Utah, anywhere that people find peace and can really find themselves, it's going to get taken up quickly.
Right. And then before you know it, the piece is gone.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely getting more populated. And I think that's why this project became even more important than ever, because again, going back to that social awkwardness that I have as a kid, I need my environment, I need my nature. And so with the more building that we have and the more people that are coming up here, the more illegal dumping that we're going to have. And the more and more our beautiful nature is not only getting taken up by building, it's getting taken up by trash, which ultimately kills, all the plants and all the vegetation and all the animals. And then we have nothing left. And they also close land. This is how a lot of our public lands get closed, and we don't get the rights to use them anymore. And you can see a lot of that happening in Yucca and Joshua Tree already. A lot of the places that I used to go camping just in my neighborhood are now fenced off and closed off by BLM because they're just tired of it. They're tired of the illegal dumping. They're tired of people being irresponsible and getting injured out there and using resources and having to get pulled out of there for things that could have been prevented. So there's a lot of change that's happening quickly that is kind of crazy, especially when you've been in a town your whole entire life. It's definitely crazy to see. Never really think about it. You always hear your parents or your grandparents saying I remember when this was an orange field, and you can't fathom that as a kid. And then as an adult, you're like, oh, wow, this used to be a field of Joshua trees. And now there's a housing complex. It's rough, but I mean, it's not just here. It's all over. So,
yeah. What would you say is the number one reason, or maybe the top 2 or 3 reasons that people feel the need to dump illegally?
I think it's fees, honestly, because just in our project alone, what we're finding, to take a tire, one tire is $4. So for a car that has 4 tires, it's going to stack up. And originally, Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley were a low income area. And so when you have low income families and you have them taking off tires, they can't afford those fees. They can't afford to pay the dump fees. And yeah, that's great. We get dump cards and everything, but there's only certain things that you can take with that. And if you're renting your house, you don't get a dump card. You have to own your house. You have to have, pay taxes on that. Yucca Valley used to have a really great program that my mom and I used to work when I was a kid. It was the cleanup days, and the town and waste management, actually, back in the day. This was before Burtec was in Yucca Valley, but waste management in the town of Yucca Valley would put together this cleanup day, and they would have the field next to Jack in the Box on Highway 62 filled with roll-off dumpsters. And you could make as many trips in that day that you possibly could to bring yard waste, appliances, tires, whatever trash you had in your house. That was the day to do it. No questions asked, bring as many loads as you could. And we're just filling dumpsters. And that was really great for the town because it really cut back that illegal dumping because people were able to go and do it. And even if they didn't have the means to transport it, people came together and were like, hey, if you load it up and you pile it together, we'll come and we'll take it for you and we'll drop it off. The town hasn't really done that on that type of scale. They do a smaller version where it's electronics and hazardous
oil, right?
Yeah, hazardous waste oil. But we need something on that scale again. We need to waive fees for a day. Landers did start a tire program where you can come and take tires to them and dispose of them. We do it. For us to transport them, ironically, you can only transport 9 tires. Anything over that is, weird, right?
Yeah.
These little things, these little legalities that we've figured out in this, you can only by law transport 9 tires a piece. Anything above that becomes a hazardous waste issue. So we've done projects at night where we've transported tires. We've done the Desert Tire Jamboree and just had people do like a scavenger hunt and gather tires for us. And we loaded them up on a huge trailer and disposed of them one night into the early morning. But it's fees. A lot of it comes down to just fees, and this being a low, well, it was a very low income area, and people, they don't really have the means to do it.
Well, and a lot of things I see sometimes too on social media is when people ask, who can haul this away, or who do you recommend to haul stuff away? There are always a ton of comments about make sure you see the card. So for someone listening who maybe doesn't even live here in the Morongo Basin, because we do have people who listen that don't live here, kind of explain that situation. So in some areas, like where I live in an apartment, we have dumpsters on site and that's where we put our trash. Other homeowners, like say in Yucca Valley and 29 Palms, they pay probably through their taxes if they own a home.
For trash service, yeah.
Okay. And is that the same then in Joshua Tree? You pay?
Joshua Tree, I believe, ironically, I don't have trash service, but
yeah, that makes sense.
But Joshua Tree is still unincorporated, so it doesn't go through taxes. So I believe you still pay like the old-fashioned way where you have an account. Yucca Valley just, I think last year, and I don't quote me on this, but just transitioned for it going on property tax. And the dump cards as well fall under property tax as well if you own your home.
So talk about what the dump card entitles you to do.
So the dump card is like a punch system where you can go basically for household trash. So you can't take construction waste. And I believe you can take green waste, and that's that. You can't take tires on it. Those are an automatic charge. You can't take, again, like that construction debris and stuff like that. And you get them, I believe, once a year. We get people that donate them to us.
Nice.
Yeah, so which is really awesome because that's how we get around with dump fees, and a really awesome lady at the dump. But you can get them through your taxes, then they mail them to you. I like them because, like I said, it's a punch system. And with those, people are more inclined to make arrangements for having things at the dump. And for people that, like you said on Facebook, that are asking for dump runs, cheap dump runs aren't always the option. If you have a lot of stuff that you need to go to the dump and somebody's offering you $100 to $200, and you don't offer a dump card or to meet them at the dump to use your dump card, chances are it's going to end up in the desert, because dump fees for a large load, like generally ours without a dump card, is probably around $100 to $200. It's $60 a ton to dump trash. I see it all the time on Facebook where people will complain about prices, somebody charging them $300 to $500 for a dump run. And if you're not offering a card, that goes towards the fees. That's coming out of their pocket. So they have to charge kind of a higher amount to go towards the dump fees, and so they can get paid. So if not, if you're paying somebody $100 to $200 for a large dump run, it's going to end up in the desert. And those ones we can always tell because they end up in dump trailers and they're square. They're packed tight and they're square and they're just dumped. And so if you are asking for dump runs through Facebook, ask for a receipt. Ask them to take a picture of the receipt, whether they weigh in or weigh out. Usually, if you don't weigh out at the dump, they give you a receipt right before you go and unload all that stuff. So that person could take a picture of that receipt right then and there and let you know how much it weighed and how much it cost in fees. So you know what you're paying for as well. So next time you try and do a dump run and somebody says, well, it's going to be $800 and it's this much weight, well, last time I paid this much in weight, what's going on? So just ask for a receipt for accountability, not only for the person dumping your trash, but just so you know how much a pound costs and what you're looking for the future. And so it doesn't end up in the desert.
Yeah.
Because cheap dump runs are not, like I said, those are the ones that usually always end up in the desert. And a lot of the times too, it's construction material, which is crazy to me when you own a construction business.
Right. Exactly. Though they're cutting costs every way we can, and they're like, well, Jillian and Colin will be out here to pick it up. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And we get that all the time from people too. We do get people that say that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing because it enables people to just do it. And I don't know. I have a degree in behavioral psychology, so I can argue that point all day long. So we'll just continue doing what we're doing.
Well, and I think there's a part of you that feels this is where I live, and I feel like responsibility to keep it nice and keep it because I want it to be that way.
Right. If nobody else is going to hike in that area, I will hike in that area. I'll walk my dogs in that area. I will enjoy that area. You don't have to.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff, but then there's a lot of non-stuff. And I guess we could throw that in the graffiti category. So what is the difficulty around being able to clean any kind of graffiti?
Well, BLM considers it illegal because it's highly, highly toxic chemicals, even though you can buy them off of Amazon. So we, just like everything else we do, because we're rebels, we get the stuff secretly and we go and do secret things and we clean it. Giant rock right now is ridiculous.
That's what I hear. I have a shop in downtown Joshua Tree and I have one of my photos there and it's of giant rock.
Yeah.
And people come in there every once in a while and they look and they go, is that giant rock? And I said, yeah. They said, have you been out there lately? I say, no. They said, you'd really be disappointed.
Yeah. So we cleaned it once. So some guy came out and thought it would be really awesome to paint a spaceship with a cow, because for some reason we have spaceships and cows out here. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. Again, going to local agencies and trying to see what we could do through local agencies. Of course, BLM is great in what they do. I'm not here to say any of these agencies are horrible because they can't help us. All of these agencies are extremely overwhelmed, understaffed and overwhelmed.
And underfunded.
And underfunded 100%. And San Bernardino County is a huge, huge county to deal with. So by no means is BLM not great. They are great for what they do and trying to control our environment in the best way possible. But for them, it's a process. They have to go through permits and they have to find volunteers and they have to do liability waivers. And that all takes time. And in that time, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So for us, it's just easier to get the supplies and kind of just low key sneak in and do it. And the people that know, and, they respect it and they understand. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's hard to go about. And it's not an easy process to get off. And you have to be really, really careful. It can't touch your skin because, like I said, it's very toxic chemicals. It's not good when it seeps into the ground. So you have to be careful with how it seeps in. And that's why a lot of the times they don't like people doing it. We try to educate ourselves the best that we can.
Right. And I think that many of us that live here do what we can to educate people about why that's not appropriate.
No. And, one of the biggest debates that I face when we talk about graffiti and wanting to clean graffiti, because a lot of people, and I don't know why all of a sudden it's become such a big thing, but a lot of the times I'm faced with, well, Native Americans did it, Indigenous people did it. Yeah, well, they did it so they could remember where they found food. They could read so they could track the sun, their plants. They did it for a purpose. Right. So they didn't do it just for Instagram or just because, look, I painted on a rock and it's pretty. Like, right. They did it for different reasons.
It wasn't doing it. It wasn't self-gratification.
Exactly.
It was really, in some cases, self-preservation.
Right, exactly. Like that was their way of journaling. That was their way of keeping track of things. They didn't have traditional, like they had paper, but it took a really long time to make. Like, so it was just a lot easier to do it up on a rock real quick, especially if you were constantly moving. And constantly traveling. It was a lot easier to do it that way, not just doing it because you want to get likes on Instagram or get followers or feel good about yourself. Just
leave your mark.
I don't care that you and Chad were here. I don't care that you and Ashley have been dating since 2000 and whenever. Come on, guys. Yeah. Let's move on from that.
Right. And it's not theirs to do it to. And I guess that was one of the things that I always think about when I see people doing that. Take that to your house.
One of the greatest things I saw, actually, it was on Giant Rock, and I took a picture of it, and somebody had graffitied "Respect and love nature." Think about that for a second.
Oh my gosh.
Spray painted on the rock, "Love and respect nature."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it just
doesn't even make any sense.
It blows my mind. It literally, when I go out here, and again, going back to being here my whole entire life, it makes me want to cry when I see that. When I see things like that, when I've gone to Giant Rock and I've camped to Giant Rock when there wasn't a speck of graffiti, to see it now, it's completely destroyed. It puts me in an awkward place to where I get really resentful of humans. And that's going back to like, we have to do this so we can have a space to where we don't get like that. So, because it's not fair to treat every single human like that, but it gets really, really hard, especially when it is your hometown. Yeah. It almost would be easier if it wasn't, honestly.
Yeah. So. Talk to me about the nails. What's up with the nails?
So that's super fun. We had a friend, so going back to the camping trips every year, Sunfair Dry Lake Bed, which is a unspoken off-road area. The locals tend to know about like the off-roading, and the law enforcement's really awesome. They don't really care too much, but it's not designated off-highway. But we would go out there camping all the time. And it wasn't too bad because back in the day, you would always burn just regular wood or Christmas trees and stuff like that. Well, now people started burning pallets. And what happens when you burn pallets is they have a gazillion nails in them. I encourage anybody, if you have a pallet, go look at it and just count one side of how many nails there is, and you'd be kind of shocked. So when you burn pallets, they don't burn the nails. The fire doesn't get hot enough to burn. So you're left with just a pile of nails. And so when people drive through, they get in your tire. And we got tired of constantly driving out there and getting flats in either our dirt bikes, our off-road vehicles. We were constantly, and it's frustrating, constantly plugging and replacing tires. It got to the point to where one of our friends didn't want to go camping out there anymore because of all the nails. And again, that sucks to have beautiful land around you that people don't want to use because it's trashed. So we decided we were going to get these construction magnets. They're giant. You can get them at...
I just had a flash of like either the Roadrunner or Bugs Bunny using one.
Right? Like a giant magnet. That would be great if we had one. I need Acme Academy for that. That would be awesome. But something kind of like that, but it's on a pole instead of like a hanging down thing, and it's giant, and you can push it on the ground or like roll it, like we'll pull it behind us, and it makes a popcorn sound when there's nails. It picks up anything that's magnetic, even dirt with the iron core in it. It'll pick some of that up too. But we'll just go through anywhere that we see that there was like a camp, like a campfire ring, and we'll take the rocks and we'll move them. We'll rake it out continuously until we don't hear the popcorn sound, and we'll get all the nails. In the beginning, we were making nail art, which, oh my goodness, I'd rather go rake nails out of sand than try and make nail art. So that was a short-lived process. So anybody out there, if you're looking for nails, I got you. I have a bunch because
Oh
I'm
my
not
gosh.
doing it.
Well, it's funny, as I do sometimes, I went out online and I was looking for some interesting material on the whole desert cleanse thing. And I came across a video from Falcon Tires or Falcon. So wait,
Yeah,
this is hilarious. So last week,
they're
I
awesome.
I walk out to my car and my right rear's flat. I'm like, shoot.
Yeah.
And I hate going to the Valero because that thing is always broken and I can't use those things at the gas station anyway, right? So I came home and I'm like, well, shoot, I'm going to have to get up early in the morning and go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's or something and get that. I got a 12 volt that I can plug into my cigarette lighter that will inflate my tires because I used to have one. And I don't know what I did with it. So I look it up online. I found it at AutoZone, and then I noticed it said have it in 3 hours. I'm like, what? I don't even have to drive there. Give me that. So the guy brings it to the house. I blow up my tire. I go where I need to go. I guess it was Friday, and then when I came out Friday afternoon, flat again.
Yep. Yeah.
So I call because I have warranties on all my tires. So I call down the hill and I go, hey, listen, I think I've got something in my tire. Can I get an appointment? They had a 9 o'clock. So I leave my house, and because it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to run that thing because it's loud. It's like, meh. So I go around to the water company. I plug it on my tire. I wait the 8 or 10 minutes it takes to fill it up. I drive down the hill, and don't you know, there's a screw in my tire, too close to the sidewall. So we go in and he's like, well, we don't have the same kind of tire, but we can. So he's making me these tire deals. And he goes, well, we have some Falcons. And I'm like, what is that? And he says, oh, they're really good. You'll be happy with it. So I better be. So I've got 3 of them on my car now. And then today go on.
Yes, that is amazing.
Like, oh my gosh, Falcon. So how did that deal come around for you guys?
So that was one of the most random sponsors. And I think that is one of the best sponsors that we have. Jeremy is amazing and he's awesome. Between him and Power Tank, they take care of us for all of our tire needs. Falcon actually sent us for our military trailer that we have that we use for a lot of our dump runs and a lot of our cleaning. They sent us the burliest mud terrain tires. I'm not going to go into the full detail of the name because I will probably butcher it and he'll get really mad at me. But all I know is they're the mud terrain Falcon tires. They're gnarly looking. We have not gotten a flat in them once. Yeah. And so they, ironically, a lot of people have hit Falcon up. They do not make trailer tires, but these ones, they were a fit for our military trailer. So it was awesome. And so they actually too, they just sent us the same set of mud terrain tires for our truck. So we don't have to deal with that because we're going through the same thing. We actually just plugged a hole in it a couple days ago because we got a screw in it because of all the construction going on in Yucca right now. But they, goodness gracious, I don't even know. I think we were just being smartasses on Instagram and tagging people in it like how we usually do when we get our random sponsors. And Jeremy just hit us up and really loved what we did, and we've been connected ever since. And I will say Falcon definitely, out of all the sponsors that we have, has been one of the most present in our cleanup adventures. They came out for the cleanup that we did at the Joshua Tree lake bed with the sheriff's department. Jeremy came out as a representative of Falcon and he did his part and he cleaned up as well. And it's so great to see big companies like that take pride and love in little communities. And that's kind of what we hope to show too. You know what I mean? We need to all be cohesive and we all need to just kind of come together and really be supportive and try and make this work, or we're not going to have it. So I really appreciate Falcon for stepping up to the plate. And it's not just our community organization that they take pride in. It's a lot of little community organizations that they do. And it's really great. And I love that we have the backing of Falcon, and being a tire organization, being known for kind of like their off-roady background, because that's another thing that we try and kind of bridge the gap in, is like the off-road community loves the environment just as, somebody that goes and takes a walk in the park. We all have a love for environment. We just have different hobbies in the environment. So Falcon has been really great. Power Tank is another one of those, who's a tire company. Essentially, they make tire patch kits. We have one, and gosh, it's saved us so many times. They make portable air tanks that are CO2 filled. They're probably going to be really mad at me if I'm not accurate on that. I'm pretty sure it's CO2. So we have that, and between Power Tank and Falcon, we're golden with our tire needs now. So they've been really great. And that's awesome that you're locked in with Falcon too. I'm going to have to tell Jeremy that and show him this. He's going to be stoked.
It was so random. And then when I found that today, I was like, oh, I feel better about this now.
Yeah.
I mean, I went online while I was in the tire shop while he was putting them on, and I'm Googling it, and I'm looking it up, and I'm like, oh, they're actually rated really well. So, okay. Yeah. And then when I saw this today, I was like, oh, wow. I feel really good about that.
Yeah, we did the interview, actually the cleanup that we did at the dry lake bed with the sheriff's department. They did the interview for the Desert Cleanse project and the Falcon tire thing. And you can see that online on YouTube too.
Yeah. Well, tell people where they can find you to either come out on a cleanup to volunteer or donate some money for those dump runs that y'all are doing.
Yeah, so right now we have the Desert Cleanse project on Facebook. You can see what we're doing on that. Or if you have Instagram, it's the same thing, Desert Cleanse project on Instagram. That one's a little bit more active than the Facebook one. Right now, we were doing cleanups, but with COVID, it's made it a little bit hard to get dumpsters with Burtec, and it's been a little bit hard to gather volunteers as well. So we're kind of just laying low and doing a little bit more of individual solo projects right now until we can get volunteers that feel a little bit safer about coming out and doing stuff, because ultimately, public safety is important too. Once that starts up, and the heat too, it's hard to start a cleanup. Nobody really wants to get up at like 4:30 in the morning. So no matter how many tacos we bribe them with, we're probably going to resume group cleanups again when it gets cooler, or maybe even do like a cool like night one or something when we can get dumpsters available. So again, there's the Desert Cleanse project on Facebook, Desert Cleanse project on Instagram. And then as far as donations, you can donate on Venmo at the Desert Cleanse Project, or just message us from Instagram or Facebook, and we have different means. Some people don't feel comfortable transferring money on technology, and that's okay too.
Country Kitchen still taking up stuff for you?
Yeah. If you go to Country Kitchen, you can go see Sarah. Just tell them, hey, this is for Desert Cleanse Project. If you go to Joshua Tree Blanket Company, they have really awesome blankets and ponchos. You can donate there. Cliffhanger guides. If you do rock climbing, or if you know Seth, he'll pocket some cash for us and give it to us. Pretty much any local hangout in Joshua Tree, if you mention Desert Cleanse Project and want to throw down some cash, they'll usually put it in a spot for us and let us know. So yeah,
that's great.
So
well, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot of things, and I'm sure that a lot of folks who listen, this is something that really hasn't been talked about, I don't think, in the entire time I've been doing this podcast. Yeah. So I'm thankful to have you come on and explain what goes on, why, and what can be done about it. And thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to get it out. Because awareness is key. The more we can talk about it, the more we can address these issues. Hopefully in time, something more can be done about it.
Totally. So before I let you go completely, we have the magic random question jar. So I'm going to pull 4 random questions out of the jar for Jillian to answer. If you're listening and you're not familiar with the Diary Unlocked episodes of this podcast, they are available to supporters of the podcast via Patreon. So if you want to be a Patreon supporter of the podcast, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support tab, and you'll have all the instructions to sign up to be a patron of the podcast. So the questions I'm going to be asking Jillian are, you bought a lottery ticket that ends up winning $10 million. What are you doing with the money? Is this the life you thought you'd have when you were a teenager? What are 3 qualities that got you where you are today? And do you have a personal motto or mantra? And what is it? So if you want to hear Jillian's answers to those questions, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support tab, become a patron of the podcast, and you will have access not only to Jillian's Diary Unlocked, but all of the Diary Unlocks for the last 2 years. Thanks again for being here today, Jillian. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have shout outs this week to Sarah O. in Utah and Robin L. in Joshua Tree for signing on as patrons of the podcast. Thanks so much to both of you. Your generous sponsorship not only helps to keep this podcast ad-free, but helps it to be a truly listener-supported podcast. Patreon benefactor donations cover the costs involved in keeping this podcast going. Expenses like the monthly hosting platform fees, website, SoundCloud premium membership, and the transcription subscription fee. All of those are covered by generous Patreon supporters, and I appreciate you all so much. If you want to make a donation to support the podcast but can't make a monthly commitment, you can make a one-time donation via PayPal using a debit or credit card. Visit desertladydiaries.com and click on the yellow donate button. Thanks so much for listening.